Welcome to the FarmBits podcast.
FarmBits is proudly produced by the Nebraska Digital Agriculture Team and hosted by students at the University of Nebraska.
The FarmBits podcast comes to you each week to discuss the trends, the realities, and the value of digital agriculture.
Through interviews with experts, producers, and innovators from across the agriculture industry, we hope that you step away from each episode with new practical knowledge of digital agriculture technology.
Hello, FarmBits followers, and welcome to another episode of the FarmBits podcast. I'm Taylor Cross.
And I'm Kelsey Swantek, and we're glad to have you with us today as we begin diving into the topic of grain marketing tools.
On this episode, we have Dane Braun, VP of Product for Bushel from Fargo, North Dakota.
Bushel is focused on bringing innovative software products and solutions to the agriculture industry.
We expanded on a previous episode called Driving the Grain Economy with Bushel by discussing Bushel's new acquisition of GrainBridge, as well as other digital platforms.
Producers and merchandisers alike are seeing the value of digitalizing this aspect of agriculture.
With that background, let's dive into the learning more about Bushel's contributions to digital marketing with Dane. All right, and it looks like we're off and running. So thanks for committing some time to interview with us today. Dane, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about your background and how you landed at Bushel.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks for having me. I originally grew up in Wheaton, Minnesota. It's a small town south of Fargo, North Dakota, 80 miles. Grew up on a farm, growing sugar beets, corn, soybeans, wheat, sunflowers, non-GMO food grade soybeans as well. So a diverse farm production. My background then took me to North Dakota State University to get an ag economics degree. This was right during the the big recession. And so the education wise, they were offering for me to stick around to get my master's, both paying for my tuition and also giving me a stipend. And as a college student, I thought, 13 grand was a big deal. So for a year. So that was a big deal back then. And decided that it was the right thing to do to continue my degree and pursue my master's in ag economics at North Dakota State University. And then following that, so I graduated. Following that, I actually got interested in government policy, which is a really weird diversion from economics. There's an intersection there. And so I interned in DC for a while for the Sugar Beet Growers Association. And then I also came back and worked for the North Dakota State government for the Ag department. And so I ran all the policy work for the Ag commissioner at the time, and also did some of the working with like the federal level and the state level. That ultimately took me into a job at a general farm organization that was focused on cooperatives, cooperative growth, also farmer policy. And they had some investments. So I was helping them with that as well, both in the technology space, and they have restaurants in Washington, DC. And so I kind of got to know Bushel back then. It wasn't called Bushel at the time. It was Myriad Mobile, started by the two co-founders in their dorm room at North Dakota State University. And I actually connected with them. Ryan, the co-founders from my hometown, him and I connected. I had him come speak at conferences for this general farm organization I was working for. And so he would come and do precision ag technology conference. And so we just kind of grew a relationship. And then the opportunity presented itself when they decided they wanted to build a product. So no longer being just a custom software company, but build a product. Ultimately, it turned into Bushel. It's been a wonderful ride. So I've been here for 4 years now with Bushel, the company, and building out the product.
Awesome. So you mentioned Ryan. We previously have had him on the podcast. And so for those listeners who maybe didn't hear that podcast, can you just give us a brief overview of what Bushel does?
Bushel, we focus on working with grain buyers and grain sellers and strengthening that relationship. So we build software in that place and provide services as well. So we have a lot of our delivery mechanism is through the mobile application. So you've probably used a Bushel powered application. We're out in the marketplace with approximately 55,000 growers now using and logged in using the Bushel powered tools. And that is all powered for the grain buyer and the grain seller. So the grain buyer being, your traditional co-op, your elevator, your private elevator, your ethanol plants. They want to be able to deliver information to their farmers in a timely manner, and we were able to enable that with Bushel.
So on your guys' website, you have a bunch of different Bushel products listed. Can you kind of speak to us on the differences between the products and how they all work together to make your customer experience as good as it can be?
Yeah, awesome question. We're really focused on strengthening the relationship between the buyer and the seller of grain, seller being the farmer, in many cases, the grower. So a lot of the products work together. And so Bushel Mobile, for example, is our tool that we sell in order for companies to be able to deliver that timely information, that scale tickets, contract, settlement information to their farmers. It's really an operational efficiency gain for them. So they're no longer, our customers, again, the elevators, the ethanol plants, are no longer taking all those phone calls. Where's my contract at? Where's my what's wrong with this scale ticket? How much have I delivered today? That goes out the window, and now the conversations go into, hey, is this a good time to market my grain? Is this what are the markets doing? What is basis looking at? What are you thinking about for next week? And getting into those kind of conversations versus like the accounting conversation or the data piece. So that's really part of Bushel Mobile, which leads into our product that we have out in the market, Bushel Trade, where the farmer can actually submit an offer. So now as a farmer, I have all this information about my business with said grain entity. I know my contracts that I have, I know my balances, I know what I've delivered up to this point. Now I can make the decision, do I want to make an offer to sell grain? And I can do that any time of the day. I don't have to call necessarily the merchandiser or the grain buyer to do it. I can just submit my offer when I feel like it's right. And so that's Bushel Trade. And that really enables both the farmer to submit offers, but also the grain originator as well. So they can submit the offers on behalf of the farmer. They can still do that traditional phone call, continue to build that relationship, and they can submit that offer and the farmer can see it. It's working. No more is that offer sitting on a Post-it note on someone's desk. It's actually digitally being recorded and can be hedged as well, auto hedged within the market. So reducing the risk for the grain entities themselves when the offer actually hits. So it's really putting in limit offers for that farmer. So that's Bushel Trade. We also have products like Bushel Solutions. So that's our custom dev shop where that was our roots, where we built custom products for customers. Anything from a small project when they're in college to now, big projects for the likes of Bobcat and Schooler and Animal Health International. So a lot of big egg companies that we're working with now, doing all different kinds of things. And that helps get us in the door with some of these companies that maybe don't want to buy Bushel the product just yet, but want to provide, partake in the value that we have and then build maybe a custom solution for themselves. And so we really leverage that as a kind of a partnership projects. And then lastly, we have a lot of products, but another piece that's really important is Bushel fulfillment. So we've noticed that a lot of customers are doing business together within our network. Now that we have a network of customers that is hitting north of 40% of the grain market share, they're doing business with each other and need to be able to process that data and reconcile their transactions quicker and easier. Same kind of mindset when it comes to a farmer selling to a grain elevator. In this case, it's just one grain elevator selling maybe to a terminal or an exporter. They have similar problems, just different delivery mechanisms on how to solve them. They both need to get data in order to reconcile their business, to better understand how they're doing against a contract and need to be able to enter those scale tickets in. So we're really just trying to create operational efficiencies with that product.
That's awesome. It sounds like that's really streamlining the process for all your customers. I like how those all work together. You guys just acquired GrainBridge. What does that look like for you guys in terms of changing your service offerings for Bushel?
Yeah, so I think we want to take the best features of the whole, ecosystem we have. So looking at GrainBridge's offerings that they have, what are the best features that we can provide, again, to strengthen that relationship. And so many of the tools that GrainBridge provided were to help the farmer, what I'm going to call it, hit the button. I've talked about bushel trade. That's where you can make an offer. That's hitting the button. That's usually the last step in a process when you're making a decision, right? And so GrainBridge really has a lot of features and functionality that helps the farmer understand, should I hit that button, right? The farmer's already made that decision with bushel trade. This will help drive better adoption and help the farmer decide with informed decisions to actually hit that button. And so pulling some of those features and functionality from GrainBridge that makes sense in order to do that is really what we're looking at right now.
So kind of to backtrack / sum that up. So Bushel, I guess your old, I don't know the best way to say that, your classic Bushel, those are kind of more for the actual trading itself and tracking where your products are at. And then GrainBridge is kind of the back end of that, where you put in all your inputs in your fields and how much everything's going to cost. And that's kind of where your break-even cost comes from. Is that right?
That's actually from FarmLogs, the product that we acquired back in April. FarmLogs has a lot of that information where you can enter that. There is like a GrainBridge advisor tool out there that's an older product kind of that GrainBridge had. That is what you're referencing. And it's very similar to FarmLogs. So we look at how can we kind of incorporate those two together to service that. And FarmLogs really is where you can understand, you can plan out your year, you can understand your agronomy input costs, what your marketing is doing, and get kind of that full sense of your farm operation.
Yeah, that's a really good way to adopt that company and acquire it. That's fairly smart to help the farmers before that process. What's the value? Can you value this technology and digitalization and the importance that these services have to customers and users, y'all's users specifically?
Yeah, so value is created in different ways. We look at both operational efficiency for the grain entities themselves. So maybe it's answering less phone calls, it's entering data that's digitized. Before that used to just be paper. And that's for the farmer too, the operational efficiencies of not having to add up all the scale tickets at the end of the day to see how your contract is doing. It's very, very easy and convenient. And then there's also value created with new revenue opportunities. So now that you've reduced the operational efficiency, is there new revenue opportunities that come for both the grain entity and the farmer in new relationships? Maybe it's better time spent on marketing conversations. Maybe it's better time advising on that, or maybe it's taking the connections now that we have with FarmLogs, for example, our acquisition of FarmLogs, taking some of that combined data and creating a niche product or an identity preserved product. Wouldn't it be amazing if you could, combine both the data from the farm and also the data coming into the grain entities and sell it to the consumer? Our farm, for example, grows non-GMO soybeans that get exported to Asia in a container. And they're already tracking, the consumers in Asia are already wanting to know, where did that soybean plant come from? What was applied to it? Right now, that process is very, manual, paper-based process to get that information. With our recent acquisition, with the work around data standardization, we can start servicing those kind of needs and increasing revenue opportunities for farmers just by providing, this data, right? This data is valuable for them and for the entities that are buying the grain. So lots of opportunities when it comes to creating value.
So your new platform, what does that look like as far as user interaction and user profile comparatively to what you had before?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, we're looking at with GrainBridge, like what are the best features to pull out of there and incorporate within Bushel, and how do we service those customers? We also get two big players on our Bushel platform. We get Cargill and ADM, which is really important for a network effect. So now we have all this data that is available for many cases for when grain buyers are selling to one another. And so there's a big network effect there. ADM and Cargill are, in many cases, an end terminal or a processor in a lot of cases. So that's valuable to the network. And so kind of back to your question, I guess, though, like looking at the platform, we're looking really focused on the data, the standardization of the data, and leveraging that in the network effect that can be provided within the ag system.
What commodities does Bushel allow? I guess what commodities do y'all interact with? Do your users primarily grow?
Yeah. So a lot of the Bushel's history, we really started in North Dakota, right? We're based in Fargo, North Dakota. It's easier to start a company or get customers locally. And so from a commodity standpoint, North Dakota is like #1 in 14 different commodity production across the country. So we have, dry beans and lentils and sunflowers, of course, all the wheat that we have as well. And so we have even when we started out, we had to build the system to be agnostic when it comes to the type of commodity. But for kind of like now that we've gone nationally, we're all the way from the PNW, into the southeast. We have everything, including rice in our system, corn, soybeans, of course, as well. The few things that we don't do, right? We don't do like almond trees and orchards and vegetables of those kind, or sugar beets necessarily, because they're just a little bit too unique, but we do a lot of the other products. We have a significant market share in the wheat side in Kansas. For example, we got a lot of Bushel customers. So the wheat growing regions, Kansas and Nebraska and North Dakota, of course, growing a lot of wheat. And then corn, beans too. We have a lot of production as well in that. So
You mentioned you're headquartered in Fargo, North Dakota. So I'm in Nebraska. Essentially, how does marketing localization work with your platform? Is it useful to me in Nebraska and Taylor's from Virginia? Is it useful to her dad all the way out there?
Yeah, great question. So Bushel is really focused on the relationship between the grain elevator, grain buyer in the area, and the farmer. And so marketing, in a sense, we don't have a marketplace, right? So there's no general marketplace to sell grain. There's always that relationship. And in many cases, farmers know when they're growing somewhere, who's in their market, right? Like you don't have many new elevators popping up from an infrastructure standpoint. And so they generally know. And so our relationship is very one-on-one, meaning that farmer is connected with that elevator. And if there's multiple grain buyers in the area, maybe an ethanol plant too, then they'll have to download another application to do that. But again, we're focused on their relationship. So we're not trying to disrupt and create a marketplace. We're really focused on the relationship that's already built in the Bushel or in the ag system already with these grain buyers and farmers. And so that's our focus. So in order for you to like kind of get to find, a Bushel powered facility, really you're looking for their facility in the App Store, for example. You're looking for, like my hometown co-op is Wheaton Dumont Co-op Elevator. You're looking for that application. You're not going to look for Bushel. And that's really strategic in our mindset. And we think it's, agriculture has been built on this infrastructure that's so solid already. Why would we try to disrupt that? And we just want to enable it and help it grow in the greater good of agriculture.
So I wouldn't be able to log on to my Bushel Mobile or my Bushel Trade and look at my local basis. That would be, I log on to my Frontier Co-op app.
Right.
That's where that would be at.
Exactly. You'd log into Frontier Co-op app, which is powered by Bushel, and you'd be able to see your cash bids and your basis and all your scale tickets and deliveries and that kind of information there.
Okay.
So these relationships between this digital marketing resource kind of like enables what's the advantage comparatively to traditional what farmers who aren't using Bushel are doing?
Yeah, great question. I think sometimes a story helps explain it. So I was helping a farmer. This is pre-Bushel, helping a farmer. It's late during corn harvest. I'm running the grain cart for him. He's hauling in grain to 2 different elevators at the time. He had contracts going to 2 different places. It's 9 p.m. at night. He's like, Dane, go get all the scale ticket deliveries that I've had today. I need to figure out the calculations to figure out where I should deliver. Do I take the corn home? Do I take it to town? Where do I take it? And 30 minutes later of me scrambling around, gathering all the scale tickets, him adding it up, he finally made a decision, right? Like that 30 minutes could have been spent with his kids. Like that's some valuable time during harvest that you're putting 16-hour days in, you're not seeing your family. 30 minutes means a lot. And instead, he had to add everything up. Today with Bushel, if he had that, he would have been able to get that information in 30 seconds. So what kind of price do you put on that? I don't know, but that is some real value that Bushel provides.
That's really important for growers to know that value. And, everyone does, as you said, value time a little bit differently. Are there any major challenges that Bushel's faced with these growers adopting these offerings that y'all have out?
Yeah, great question. I think there's two things. Actually, historically, software in agriculture has had a lot of promises and under-delivered. And so trying to be true to what we are doing and being truthful is really key to Bushel. And so there's some trust that's kind of like lost just in general that we try to gain back. And we do that, by leveraging the local experts, right? So instead of Bushel pushing the product out there, it's really leveraged with the grain originator that many of these farmers know and trust already. So they're able to help them, adopt the software, adopt the application, and build trust within it. And I think it's also important that these technology platforms provide value. That's not always clear, and so it needs to be valuable to the farmer. And it also has to have a great user experience. I just reflect on, again, our farm, like we're investing in technology all the time. We adopt what we can, but when you're only using pieces of it, for example, in the planter, maybe you're only using the planter for 3 weeks to 4 weeks. Like, yeah, you're going to forget some of the intricacies of that display monitor, of that technology. And so that's where user experience and simplicity really matters in agriculture, in my mind, at least in my opinion, because we're not using it, farmers, I'm a farmer, we're not using it constantly. Like I'm on a MacBook right now. I use that every single day. Of course, I know all the features and functionality. In agriculture, they're bouncing between different equipment, they're using different technologies. It has to be easy to use and simple because of that, because they're using all these different products. So it's really twofold: value, and then it's got to have a great user experience.
Do you happen to know off the top of your head who kind of your most, who your users are, I guess, what age group that is?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have the range. Everyone from who's still operating on a flip phone, using their iPad to log in, and 85. Actually, it was really cool. I had a phone call. I know this is not directly answering your question, but I got a phone call from a guy who's like, yeah, I need help, from a grain buyer. I need help getting this farmer logged in. He's in the hospital and really wants to see his scale tickets. I was like, okay, I'll help you out. And so I think it's a wide range. I mean, that's, obviously on the upper side. And then there's, of course, the young Gen Z as well using the product because they want that information that's quick, timely, right? And so I think it's a wide range. It probably follows a lot of the demographics of just agriculture in general. The average age of farmer, what is it nowadays? You guys probably know offhand. Is it 58, 59?
I think it's somewhere in there. Yeah.
Yeah. So it probably follows that in general, but we get the whole range of people. So.
And do you have, I guess, a lot of issues with the usability in that older age group? I'm thinking of my family farm, and that's operated by my grandpa, my dad, and my uncle. My dad's the youngest, and he's 60, and they're not caught up on the technology. We'll just say that much.
Yeah.
You all, if you're listening, but they're not good at the technology.
They better start apologizing now. No, one of the key pieces that we saw early on was email addresses were not as prevalent, especially on mobile devices 4 years ago. I think that's changed now. I think email, now you can't even get a smartphone without an email address. But back then there wasn't. And so even thinking of the login process, how simple can it be? And the farmers, all they have to do is type in their cell phone number. that's connected with their account at their grain elevator. They get a code texted to them, and they're logged in and receiving information and value, time to value within 30 seconds to a minute. And so keeping it, even like the login process, simple was really key in hitting the demographics, I think, early on. And of course, now things have changed, right? Again, people have email addresses more now. But back, that was really a good differentiator in the marketplace for us, was the login process and good user experience just in general for all the farmers. It's easy, simple. All you have to do is know your phone number.
Right. That's really important, especially when we're talking about the older generation whom I love so much. So how might the market becoming more and more digital, how might that impact how hedgers operate and generally kind of influence the market volatility overall?
Yeah, good question. I think as you see more data being available, you could see like information coming quicker. So right now, a lot of reports from the USDA are pretty delayed when it comes to like surveys and responses. And so those are big movers in the market, as you see just in general, not just, Bushel, but as you see in general, like data timeliness and data standards coming within agriculture, you're going to see probably quicker actions that can be taken within the market as a whole, maybe speculators and hedgers altogether. And I think, that's kind of specific in general, but just for like the grain buyer or the grain merchandiser at an elevator, the impact you're seeing from digitization is more informed decision-making. So having a better complete picture of the data of your positioning and also a complete picture maybe of a more complete picture of what the growers are, what the growers are producing in your area, and also what they have, planned to sell and when they plan to sell it. And I think you're just going to have more informed decisions because of that and being part of the Bushel ecosystem.
Yeah, so it's really good that this digitalization improves, the trading and marketing of grains and various commodities. Would you say that this product and this way of marketing and trading allows growers to be more resilient in the marketplace?
Yeah, again, I think it comes to yes. I think it comes to making informed decisions. So having that data that's digitized and having the knowledge of where I'm sitting on for production, what I'm sitting that hasn't been priced, knowing what I have priced, gives you a better decision making in the end of, okay, well, maybe I should hold out or maybe I should sell. It also increases that timeliness, the time of grain buyers to be that advisor for you, right? Like how can you better understand the market? And so I think that's helpful as well. It makes them more resilient, I believe, more informed decision making.
So are there any challenges that this platform presents to grain marketers?
No, I think I don't see any challenges. I think it's just opportunities, right? So they now have farmers that are better informed on where they're at in positions. You have more opportunity to now be more informed as well of what farmers are having for offers into the future. The goal is really better. I can't say it enough. Informed decisions, I guess, using that data. And so maybe, if I could stretch to say the challenge is it's technology, and we are integrating with some older technology within some of these companies, and there can always be challenges. So sometimes power outages happen, sometimes internet is poor, and you have to adapt to make that work.
Is there an opportunity for digital marketing technologies to actually influence where farmers are going to choose to sell their grain, or even how far away they're willing to sell it and willing to travel to sell it?
Yeah, so great question. I think if you have Bushel, if you are a Bushel powered application, and software, I think farmers are going to choose where it's the most convenient for them in some cases from a technology perspective. And also from an opportunity on maybe new revenue and pricing. What can technology bring that has new revenue opportunities? I talked about it earlier about IP grain. That's just one, perspective, but there's other pieces of it that may make that farmer decide where to go. And so Many cases, I guess, in general, just to think of it, farmers are making decisions based on price, based on location, based on speed and space, and also technology in that relationship. And so, does it influence it? Yes. Is there other influencers? Of course. I'm not going to ship my grain from Minnesota all the way to Texas, hauling my semi truck, of course. Like that doesn't make sense in today's age, right? And so logistics are obviously still going to be a continuous, big piece of it, but that relationship is also key. So what does that relationship look like? And really Bushel is helping digitize that so you can focus on more of the valuable pieces of the relationship, not necessarily just the grain accounting needs.
So do you think that's even going to influence, like my family has like 3 elevators we haul to, and it's like based on which field we're at and which one's closer. Do you think that's going to help if my family were to adopt it, for example? Is that going to help them to drive further or to a different location, not necessarily further, but to a different location? Is that going to open the door of possibilities up to them more, do you think?
I think it is definitely a potential. Like what value do you put on knowing, I'll even make comparison. What value do you have on banking with a bank that has a mobile application versus not? Would you bank at some place that doesn't have a way for you to access your records? I would say that would be a hard sell.
Right. Right.
Like I don't know anyone my age that still manages a checkbook and balances it, right? I think the same is true in agriculture. At some point, you're just going to be, would I really want to go there? I don't know. I think there's a decision that comes when you have, is one Bushel powered versus not? You might have that decision of, well, do I want my records to be easier to see versus maybe the traditional paper method? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Does you mentioned, it's really important that y'all offer those records. Well, not that y'all offer the records, but that relationship, the grower can see those records. What other technology integrations do you feel it's really important for a digital marketing platform like this to be so successful?
Yeah, so we've also really stayed agnostic, and we, in a sense that we integrate with all these different accounting platforms from the grain buyer standpoint. So they're running what's called ERPs, enterprise resource planning software. Some of them were built in the 80s, some of them were built, more modern. And we're agnostic in a sense, so we've integrated with all of them and can pull that data in. That same is true as even on the cash bid management side. So keeping things simple for our customers is really key. And so we bring in cash bids from DTN, AgriShards, or commodity and other sources. We also have our own, but we try to stay agnostic in a sense that let the customer decide what other software they want. We will help you bring that information wherever you keep it to the farmers that want to see it. And so integrations like that are really key. I think now, the more modern or the next step in the I guess the process is taking the integration, the acquisition, I guess, of farm logs and integrating data back into that and really bringing the connection of production or inputs, I should say, and the production of corn, soy, wheat, all those products, and the actual sale of them, and connect that information. So now as a farmer, I would be able to log into my farm logs, see all my scale tickets, all my contract information, all my settlements coming into farm logs from across the ecosystem of Bushel, and not just one elevator at a place. And so I can better manage my business within there. And so that one's really an important next step for us, is integrating farm logs into Bushel and making it both directions. So also attaching field information and records, application records, where did that grain come from, trying to get to some kind of higher level traceability of the products that are grown within the egg supply chain.
You kind of already went down this path, but are there any, what are you, I guess, most excited about? Is there any, new integrations that y'all are working on that you're excited to, for Bushel?
This is some people may find this really boring, but I find this really exciting. I'm a nerd, let's just call it that, right? So I love the idea of standardizing the grain data this is not an easy effort, but it's an important effort. And I'll relate it to what's happened in the fintech space. So all the banks used to have all different kinds of data elements. And so when you were a fintech company like Robinhood, I'm sure there's some people here that use Robinhood or other applications, you weren't able to sign up as quick as you were. I bet when the company called Plaid decided to standardize all the banking data, they had no idea what the innovation was going to come. They had no idea Robinhood was going to be a thing. I think that's true in agriculture. I get so excited about standardizing data because it can innovate, it create all these innovations that we are not even aware of. Like, I think there's some we can dream of, right? But like just even doing business easier together is a huge innovation, like reconciling a data. But there's innovations that I don't even know yet are going to come. And that actually excites me, like the mystery of the innovation. And the boring work of standardizing data is what's going to breed innovation. And if we don't do that, we just can't innovate. And so that, I think, while it's like really boring, hard work, is really important to the future of agriculture in general.
Yeah, I agree for sure. Data is really important, and everyone being on the same page with it is just room for
That makes everything easier for everyone across the board.
Yeah.
We should all be able to use the same word corn and know what corn is.
Right.
But that doesn't even happen today, or moisture is not always represented the same. We don't even use the same terminology. So it's really key that we get back to the basics and have this standardization. And it's also key with data that it's secure and it's private, right? And I think that's really important when it comes to data. I mean, my data sits in Bushel, for example. Like, that's how important security is to me, is that I have grower data. My farm's production is in Bushel, and security is really important. We've seen, some attacks in the marketplace from ransomware. We're taking the utmost, investment. We're investing a lot of money into security because it is that important to us. So,
do you have any words of advice, knowledge, maybe for those growers and listeners, if they're wanting to know how to use these tools, where to go find them, really to improve those marketing decisions, to improve their operations overall?
Well, definitely, first step, check out Bushel by going to bushelpower.com. You can find all the elevators and companies that we have serviced and have products with. And you can also, find links to farm logs and more information about GrainBridge acquisition as well. But just in general, I think with technology, the more time you put into it, the more value you get out. And while Bushel is really focused on the simplicity of using technology and making sure it's easy to use, you still have to take that first step. And so my advice is just, look at it, put time into it, make sure you're getting the value out of it, of course. But in order to get the value, you may have to do some work to do that. So.
Thank you very much to Dane Braun for taking the time to join this episode of the FarmBits podcast. It's really exciting to see where Bushel has been and where they're going within this digital agriculture industry. I think one of my favorite parts of this episode was learning about the importance not only growers, but merchandisers as well, to have digital records for them to make those informed decisions on buying, selling, and trading of various commodities.
I really enjoyed learning about how the simplicity of Bushel's platforms encourage adoption of the technology for all age groups in the industry. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and we look forward to sharing another digital ag story with you next week on FarmBits.
Thank you for taking the time to join us today on the FarmBits podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts to be informed about the latest content each week.
We welcome your feedback, so if you have comments or questions for us, please reach out to us over email, on Twitter, or in the review section of your favorite podcast platform. Our contact information can be found in the show notes.
We would like to thank Nebraska Extension for their support of this podcast and their commitment to providing high-quality informational material to members of the agricultural community in Nebraska and beyond.
The opinions expressed by the hosts and guests on this podcast are solely their own and do not reflect the views of Nebraska Extension or the University of Nebraska.
We look forward to you joining us next week for another episode of FarmBits.